Thank you. We'd like to welcome you all for coming to tonight's open house meeting in the city of Glendale. This is our second of 3 meetings we're doing for the Burbank, Los Angeles section for high-speed rail. This meeting is also being live webcast, so after you go home tonight, if you'd like to see the presentation again, you're welcome to go check it out. We'll have it posted in the next day or two, and then folks at home, welcome, and we're glad that you're watching us tonight. Michelle Boehm will be presenting tonight, and then following her presentation, we will return back to the open house format so that you can engage with our team members with questions or comments that you'd like to share. We also have comment cards we hope you'll fill out and leave your thoughts with us. So it's my pleasure to introduce Michelle Boehm, the Southern California Regional Director for the California High-Speed Rail Authority.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, all of you, for your attendance tonight. We very much appreciate and value the time that you've taken out of your lives to come hear this informational presentation tonight on the high-speed rail project. Before we get started, I'd like to see a show of hands for everyone who's here tonight and this is your first high-speed rail presentation. You have never been to a high-speed rail presentation before. If you could raise your hands. All right, great. Well, welcome to High-Speed Rail. Again, we appreciate your attention tonight. On the slide here, you can see our agenda for tonight's presentation. We're going to talk first about what high-speed rail is and where we're planning to build it and why. Then we're going to talk specifically about the Burbank to Los Angeles project section and some of the new thinking that we're bringing to this section. Then we're going to talk a little bit about connecting communities and some of the other things that we're thinking about as we're bringing high-speed rail to fruition. And then our next steps give you a high-level timeline in terms of what we're working on. And so what is high-speed rail? We all have the privilege of living in the state of California. The state of California has one of the largest economies in the world. And when you look at the things that make economies successful, make them work, one of those key components is commerce. And if you break commerce down, it's the ability to move people and goods quickly and efficiently around so that they can conclude and complete their business. And one of the things that we also know as California residents or visitors is that it is not always easy to move people and goods around in California quickly and efficiently. Right now, today, of course, there's a lot of delay in many of our transportation systems. Our short-haul air market, for instance, from Southern California to Northern California is one of the busiest in the country, and 1 out of 4 airplanes is not on time because of that congestion. Of course, we don't really have to talk a lot about our freeways. All of us have an experience here in Southern California probably where going a very short distance takes a very long time. And we also have a lot of congestion on our existing steel rails. On our tracks here in Southern California, we share one set of tracks, often just one north and one south, and sometimes just one track between our passenger rail service and our freight rail service, our goods movement. And so there is a lot of conflict between those two modes of transportation on those tracks right now, and there is a need for that system to perform better as well. So that's where we're at today. We have 38 million people in the state of California today. By the middle of this century, it is projected that we will have 50 million people living in the state of California. And so we need to start now planning for that 50 million people that will be here in the state by the middle of the century. We can't wait and put off the investments that we need to make sure that we still have a thriving economy when we grow by 50 million people. Just for your frame of reference, that's adding about 12 more million people, of course, to the state of California. And that would be like if we went over to the state of Ohio right now today, and we asked everybody in Ohio to join us here in California. That's what we're talking about in terms of growing our population to 50 million people. And so that's why we want to start now in addressing our transportation system and making sure that it works for us by the time we get to the middle of the century. We have other priorities, though, as well. We want to address our greenhouse gas emissions, and we want to reduce those so that we are providing for a cleaner and better environment for the future. And so in order to do that, we want to look at other and alternative modes of transportation that can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's where high-speed rail comes in, because it is an all-electric form of transportation. And then finally, we want to be good business people. We want to make sure that we are bringing the right tool to solve the right problem. And high-speed rail is the most efficient mode of transportation in moving a person a mile at trips between 1 and 600 miles. It is cheaper to put that person and move them for 1 to 600 mile trips on high-speed rail than it is to put them on any other form of transportation. And so there is a good business sense to bringing a new mode of transportation to the state of California as well. So it's an entire package. It's about addressing our population growth, maintaining a strong economy, supporting good environmental policy, and doing it with an eye to the most efficient mode possible. High-speed rail is not new. It is operating in 12 countries around the world right now. There are almost 20,000 miles of high-speed rail lines right now operating. Almost 2 billion annual passengers are taking high-speed rail. And so while we're planning high-speed rail here in the state of California, we are looking at each of these other systems that are operating around the world, and we will be taking the best practices, the best components of each of these systems, and bringing them to the state of California so that what we're building here is the best expression of all-electric high-speed rail that is operating around the world. And so what are we planning? What has the state brought to the table in terms of the high-speed rail plan? It is an 800-mile, all-electric, high-speed train system, as I mentioned. On the map, in the navy blue is our Phase 1 system, which connects from the San Francisco Bay Area all the way down to Anaheim. That, of course, is where the Burbank to Los Angeles section lies, towards the southern end of that. You can also see on the map our two extensions, our Phase 2 extensions, one in the north to Sacramento and one in the south to San Diego, out through the Inland Empire. And then you can also see on this map high-speed service that is being planned by other owners, not by the California High-Speed Rail program, but by other owners. They are looking at right now planning and building a high-speed link to Las Vegas from Victorville. And there are also current plans to connect Palmdale, where California High-Speed Rail would have a station, to Victorville. So in the future, with California High-Speed Rail operational, we would also have interstate high-speed rail service to Las Vegas. And here in Southern California, this is our map. This is what we're doing down here. This is managed out of a local office here at LA Union Station with local consultants and local residents who are working to plan high-speed rail service. You can see here those sections that we are working on and overseeing. We have Bakersfield to Palmdale, which crosses the Tehachapi Mountains and closes a current rail gap in the Amtrak rail system right now. Currently, if you would like to go to Union Station and take a train to the Central Valley, you need to take a bus to get to Bakersfield, and then you can get on a train and go north. So we would be placing fast, efficient passenger train service up to Bakersfield from Los Angeles. We also then have Palmdale to Burbank, and you can see that there's a lot of variation in that section. We're studying a wide range of alternatives there right now. It is very, very complex, and we want to make sure that we're studying the appropriate things to get that right. Then, of course, where we are tonight, we go Burbank to Los Angeles Union Station. It is the shortest project that we are working on by mileage, but it is one of the most complex and certainly important connections to connect the San Fernando Valley to downtown Los Angeles. Then, of course, we have the Los Angeles to Anaheim section, which rounds out our Phase 1 system. And then our Los Angeles to San Diego section, which, as mentioned, goes through the San Gabriel Valley and then down to San Diego with its terminus station at the San Diego airport down there. So some of the things that we are really working on is making sure that we are connecting population centers with the high-speed service. We're connecting airports with the high-speed service, and we are working with local transportation providers to make sure that we are identifying ways that we can connect and complete the existing transportation system to complement high-speed rail, as high-speed rail would also complement it. And so I mentioned that we're working with other transportation providers, and we're looking for those opportunities to make connections in our system and improve safety where we have opportunities right now. So we are putting literally our money where our mouth is in terms of doing that. We are investing high-speed rail dollars in short-term projects that can grow transit ridership across the state of California, because we know the more people that ride trains now, the more people will ride high-speed rail in the future when it's operational. And you can see here a list of those important projects that we're investing in. In LA County, we invested over $100 million in the Regional Connector Project, which takes light rail service underneath downtown Los Angeles, so that we can connect the south and the west light rail systems we have operational now with the north and the east light rail systems that we have operational now. So Expo and East Side are now part of a single system instead of being two separate standalone systems. But we were very interested in safety as well, and so we have invested in the Positive Train Control project for Metrolink, for Amtrak, and for our other passenger rail providers in the state of California. Positive Train Control, of course, is the system that allows every train to know where every other train is, and it allows the system to know how fast every train is traveling and what safe speeds are at a particular location. And so if the system detects that a train is going too fast or a train is getting too close to another train, it has the ability to alarm and warn the engineer, and if the engineer does not react, it can slow the train down to the proper speed or stop the train and prevent trains from running into other trains. We are very, very proud of being investors in that. Here in Southern California, we will be bringing Positive Train Control online for our Metrolink system basically ahead of the rest of the country, and so that's something we should be very proud of. We also invested in new locomotives for Metrolink. These are Tier 4 locomotives that reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of the locomotives by about 85%. They're quieter, they're faster, and they could pull more cars, so we could put more passengers on our rail systems right now. Those are some of the short-term projects we invested in. We also invested in mid-term projects that, again, can help us grow existing ridership, make the overall passenger rail system safer, provide key connections where we don't have them right now. And several examples of that include the run-through track project at LA Union Station, or the SCRIP project. If you are familiar with LA Union Station, the tracks that serve LA Union Station dead end at the 101 freeway to the south right now. The run-through track project would take those tracks and connect them into the river sub, or the other tracks south of there running along the river, so that trains that want to utilize Union Station can now just pull directly into Union Station, drop passengers, pick up passengers, and pull directly out of Union Station. And they don't have to all come in one single entrance point to the north of the station. It is estimated that by doing this project at Union Station, we will be reducing the greenhouse gas emissions at Union Station by about 40%, because the trains won't have to sit in that station idling, waiting for a chance to get out of the station and meet their slot. It will also have dramatic improvements to all of our regional rail service and the on-time performance of our Metrolink and Amtrak trains here in Southern California, because most of those trains travel through Union Station at some point in the day, and it is a bottleneck right now. So that's the kind of project that we're looking at. Another project that we're looking at is the Rosecrans-Marquardt grade separation project. That is currently a 5-point vehicle intersection with at-grade train tracks running through it. We are investing in half of the construction costs to make sure that we get that grade separation built. Once that grade separation is built for Southern California, it will unlock additional slots, additional times that we in Southern California can run passenger service. That is great news, but most importantly, it will reduce one of the most dangerous grade separations, basically take it off the map so that it is no longer an at-grade crossing, and so that people, cars, bikes, cannot get in front of trains at that particular location. So those are the kinds of projects that we're looking at moving forward. Let's talk now a little bit about the Burbank to Los Angeles project section. You can see the map here. Again, this is about a 12-mile section, obviously traveling from a proposed station adjacent to the Burbank Airport. We are still looking at what the ultimate location of that would be, and that activity is being handled under the Palmdale to Burbank section planning projects. We then travel within the existing rail corridor all the way down to Los Angeles Union Station. And you can see on the map that we've indicated some existing connecting services that are going, sort of roughly east-west across this corridor. And we've indicated with some dotted lines some potential connecting service that we as regional transportation providers may be involved in the future, in a future regional discussion. Such connections as perhaps the Red Line someday being connected to the Bob Hope Airport, the Orange Line being connected either to the San Gabriel Valley or the Bob Hope Airport. These are the kinds of things that can maximize our existing rail systems and bring more riders into the fold. But there's something really, really important about what we're looking at for this corridor. Again, and I want to stress, this piece is part of the Lausanne rail corridor. It is an existing train corridor right now. This is where our Amtrak trains and our Metrolink trains and some UP trains are operating as we speak, and there is about 100 feet of right-of-way located throughout this corridor. We are looking at bringing high-speed rail to this corridor in such a way that we can improve the corridor for all of the folks that live and work alongside it. We are looking at the high-speed rail project as a regional mobility project in this section, that as we bring high-speed rail into this corridor, we can potentially bring other benefits to this corridor as well. We can bring grade separations where there are no grade separations, but these are things that need to be talked about. We can bring barriers at the outside of the corridor, not just around high-speed service, but around all services, so that animals and children cannot get into these rail corridors anymore and get hurt. In areas where we have sensitive noise receptors, those barriers could be sound walls to minimize the sounds of the train to the folks, again, residents and businesses living alongside the corridor. That is what we are planning here, to build new tracks, because we need additional tracks within this corridor, because we talked about the fact that we've got just a couple of tracks and we have a lot of services using them. We can bring new tracks in here, but we can make this corridor work much more effectively than it does now, and we can make it a better neighbor than it is now to the folks surrounding the corridor. And of course, to the south, we have that same approach, that corridor mobility approach. We will, again, south of LA Union Station down to Anaheim, be placing new track infrastructure within the existing railroad corridor. And there are many, many details of doing this that we need to work out, location by location, mile by mile, as we go through this process. But this is the planned project south of Burbank down to Anaheim. And of course, as we do this, this is very, very difficult. High-speed rail is a very long, large infrastructure project. It touches many, many communities and many features of the state of California. And so we've developed this graphic to kind of represent essentially the approach that we're taking to bring high-speed rail to Southern California. And it's really a question of looking at the things that we need to evaluate as we build high-speed rail and balance them together to get to the right answer. And the first thing is the project objectives. We have to build a safe railroad system. We have to build a fast railroad system, fast enough to go from Los Angeles Union Station to San Francisco in 2 hours and 40 minutes. We need to put stations in the locations where we can get the most riders, because we need to build a business. We're not just building a railroad. Those are all the things that we need to consider as we're building this. Then we need to take a look at the environmental resources as well. We need to make sure that we can build this so that it protects our waterways and our natural spaces and our trees and our animals and our plants. And so those things are all very important as well. And many resource agencies work with us as we work through that design. And then on the top, and not by accident, we need to work with and consult with our communities. This, as I mentioned, this system, this 800-mile system, travels through many, many different and diverse communities. But it has to be an 800-mile system that works together, too. So it is very, very complex and very important for us to go out and work with each of our individual communities to understand what is important to them about the character of their community. What are the restaurants those locals within the community use? What are those back road routes, right, that you take when there's lots of traffic and you need to get from one side of your community to the other? Those are the types of things that we would like to learn about your community, because they help us as we design this project to understand how to preserve those things that are important to your community so that it can continue to thrive as we plan and build and bring high-speed rail online. And so to that end, we have a program called Connecting Communities, or Community Connections, and we are looking at identifying and prioritizing opportunities in key areas where the investment that high-speed rail will be making in our system can work with investments that are being made by other agencies to bring things forward within this project that may not otherwise be able to be brought forward. And we have 5 different areas that we're looking at. You can see here the environment, access and mobility, community, business, workforce development and education, and stations. Those are the primary areas that we're looking to identify these opportunities. And I'll just name a couple in some of these different categories that we're thinking about. Within the environment, as we build high-speed rail here, particularly as we're designing it within the existing rail corridor, we will also be designing a drainage system. We could design that drainage system potentially so that that water drained through treatment and then was re-injected into the groundwater system here, so that you not only have a transportation project, but you have a transportation project that can help us address our water needs as well. That is very reasonable to assume that that could be accomplished, but it will take partners, LA County, City of LA, City of Glendale, and others to bring something like that to fruition. And of course, we're talking to these partners right now about those kinds of opportunities. In the access and mobility area, we're looking at those transportation connections. Where are the missing links in our existing transportation system? What are the places and locations that we should be working with regional transportation partners to address and identify as priorities so that we can close those gaps in the future? And we talked a little bit about maybe gaps between existing systems and the airport right now, gaps between the San Fernando Valley and the San Gabriel Valley. These are types of locations that we need to take a look at and see if it makes sense to work to bring gap closures to those locations. Within the business, workforce, and education, we're looking at our K through 12 right now and our STEM programs and the opportunity for this generation of school children to see us stand up and build the largest transportation project in the country here in California, and hopefully inspire them into careers that they may otherwise avoid or not even know about. So those are some of the areas of opportunity that we're looking at right now. Now, in terms of the process, this is a very, very simple graphic that at a high level steps through the process. You can see that we are here at the beginning of the process. This is where we develop alternatives. We develop the route concepts that will ultimately be the foundation for studies as we go through the process. And you can see at the top, in the top 2 lines, in the sort of the darker blue and the brighter blue, that's the standard process that all infrastructure projects go through as they are identified by agencies and owners and walk through the planning process to move into the construction process. At the bottom there is an additional feature that we would like to bring to fruition as we go through the standard process, and that's that community process that we talked about on the last slide. We want to make sure that we have the opportunity to work with our communities and regional stakeholders to go through that list of priorities of other things that we should be looking at and focus so that at the end of that environmental process, when we have a recommendation for what project we're building, we have incorporated the appropriate features from this prioritization process into that project. Here is a list of all of the in-depth studies that are done on our route concepts as we go through this process to study them, to make sure that we have done our due diligence and we understand every aspect of this project. You can see here there are many, many areas of study that we undertake for that. And what are our next steps? Here is a very high-level timeline. Today, we are here in Glendale. Last week, we are at LA Union Station, and later in this week, we'll be at Cypress Park. We are talking about the Burbank to Los Angeles project section. We are talking about the fact that we will be designing this project within the existing rail corridor, and we are soliciting from you that feedback on your community, that information about the things that we need to know about your community as we're designing this project, so that we can bring to the fore a report that captures basically the route concept that we want to study in more depth as we move forward. We would like to conclude that report over the course of the next several months. Once that report is concluded, then we will go and study that route concept in detail as we walk through the process to prepare additional documentation, including the draft environmental document and ultimately the final environmental document. And of course, we talked about the community engagement. This is just the first of many meetings that we will be having on the Burbank to Los Angeles section. And again, obviously tonight, we do have this webcasted. So if you have friends or neighbors who would like some information on high-speed rail, please let them know that they will be able to see this presentation online at their leisure. And then Thursday of this week, we will conclude with a meeting in Cypress Park. And our sections, each of our high-speed rail sections have a helpline, a 1-800 number, and an email address. So we are strongly encouraging you to comment tonight. We have a table with cards that are specially printed up for you to provide specific comments in terms of the things that we should know about your community as we plan this project. But if you can't think of anything, or if you wake up in the middle of the night in a week or a month and you've got something we need to know, please feel free. Give the 1-800 number a call, email in that comment. The public comments are always open and always taken as we move through this process. So thank you very much for your attention. As mentioned, we will now go back to the Q&A with the screens, and I will be up here available to you on the side if you would like to consult with me. Thank you.